Daryl here. The channel is programming in any language. The supporting website is www.black-duck.com. You'll find the videos and PDFs of the code there in most cases. The video is Introduction to Structures. If you reviewed many of my previous videos, you're familiar with the fundamentals of programming using C#. You are ready to cover more advanced operations. That brings us to structures. With structures, we'll cover structures themselves as well as enumerated types and dictionaries. In this video, we'll also make a quick stop and visit the DateTime structure and the TimeSpan structure. We are covering these here because the DateTimePicker control has already been discussed in the Toolbox section and directly relates to these two structures. And these two structures provide a good example of how a single structure can contain many individual pieces that are all separate variables in their own right. Let's get started. We're going to take a look at structures. By now, you know the fundamentals of programming using Visual C#. You're going through a lot of stuff. It's time to cover more advanced operations. And with structures, we'll discuss structures themselves, enumerated types, and dictionaries. We'll cover all those separate in separate videos. Structures, in essence, allow you to encapsulate several variables into a single item. In other words, you can have one name and have a bunch of different variables in there, including integers, strings, whatever. You can combine a number of things in there. Great for addresses, great for customers, whatever. Starts getting you into the database mode again. Enumerated types are data types that you, the programmer, can create. And dictionaries are data structures for storing items known as key value pairs, and we'll take a look at those later as well. For now, let's look at some specific structures. There's two of them, the DateTime structure and the TimeSpan structure. And we looked at the DateTimePicker a while back in the tools that you get with C#. And these two kind of relate to that. So we're going to be able to see this and put this into place. But the DateTime structure is you're going to see a structure that contains a number of different variables in it that you have access to. And this is a C# data type. Let's take a look. In the .NET framework, the DateTime structure stores a date, a time, or both. The date and time values are stored internally as the year, month, day, hour, minute, seconds, and milliseconds. You can see the ranges in there. The year is 1 through 9999, month 1 through 12, and so on. They all make kind of sense there. And they're all integers. These are all integers stored in a DateTime structure. The following creates an instance of the DateTime structure named DT, set to a default date of January 1st, year 1, at 12 midnight, basically, 0 milliseconds. So DateTime, DT equals new date time. Just the way we create a random number generator or whatever. To set the individual date and time properties, we use parameters inside that thing. So we say DateTime, DT equals new date time, then the year, month, date, hour, minute, seconds, and milliseconds. All those particular things are there to allow you to implement. You don't have to put them all in, but you do have to put the ones you will want to change in there. And to set an individual date to December 15, 2025, for example, we use DateTime DT, new date time, 2025, the year, 12 is the month, 15 is the day, and we left the zeros for the hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, which means it'll set it to midnight, basically. Now DT time is set to December 15, 2025 at 12 a.m., as we can see that. To display the current date and time, current date time equals DateTime now. That's a method you can use in C# to grab the date time. So if you want to just grab it, that's it. Current time is whatever you click that button and it brings it in. To convert a string to a DateTime structure, you say DateTime try parse string out variable. So all this stuff comes in as integers, but you can convert it to a string which can easily be displayed or parsed. The DateTimePicker is in Toolbox Common Control Area, allows you to select the date. So you can use that in conjunction with the DateTime structure. And we can compare DateTime objects using relational operators. For example, object 1 is greater than object 2 will be true if object 1 is later than object 2. And object 1 is less than object 2 will be true if object 1 is earlier than object 2, and so on. So you can do these comparisons with dates and go from there. Let's use C# and see how this all might happen. I've got a form sitting up here right now. In fact, let's extend this a little bit so we can get the full breadth of this thing. And what I want to do is I want to go into the code. So I have nothing in this form at this point in time. So I'm going to go into the code first of all. And I'm going to go into this place, and I'm under the form here, I'm going to set up a global variable, a global structure variable, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to use the DateTime. Notice both date and time are capitalized. And I'm going to call it struct, STK, so I know it's a structure. I'm going to call it DateTime. And I'm going to say equals to new DateTime. But I'm going to put in some parameters in here. I'm going to say 2025 for the year. Give it a comma. Put in a 1. Put in a 7. Put in a 0, a 0, a 0, and a 0. And then end it. And we get this. So what I've actually done is I've set up a date time variable, a structure called struct date time. And it's going to be January 7th, 2025 with midnight, basically, with no time elements in it. I've got this sitting in there. Now, what I'd like to do is kind of display this thing somehow. So we're going to go to the form, and I'm going to grab some variables. Actually, I'm going to grab a button right away that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the Do It button. I've got one sitting right over here, which I'm just going to pull in and put it over here. And I'm going to call this thing Button Do It. Already got it set here, and I'm also going to, as we're using the font of 10, so we got Do It in there, so we got this thing in here, and I'm going to actually write some code for this in a bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to also put in a label up here, which I'm going to call LBL out, and it's just a generic label with nothing in there, so it's invisible. Basically, you see it out there and everything. But I'm going to write some code for this thing, so I'm going to go into the Do It button, and I'm going to go ahead and basically say lblout.text is equal to stk datetime to string, and leave it at that. And that's all I need to do. So what it's going to do, it's going to display in this label the date time I've set up here in the stk datetime. So let's take a look at it. We'll do a file save on it and do a run. Our program comes up. You don't see much there. It's not very impressive. Hit Do It there, and the date time does come up. It's January 7th, 2025 at 12 a.m. So we know that it's been established that the date time structure has been set, and I can access all of the variables that are in there, all the integers that are sitting out there. And we're going to look at that by just seeing what we can actually do. So I'm going to actually close this thing down and go back to my form. And I've got some panels or some objects that I've set up. And I'm just going to copy these over here so we don't have to go through the process of actually developing these things. But they're all labels. And I'm just going to pop them on the screen. And I've got them all named. So I've got a year here. These are not named because these are just label items that are going to be sitting out here, like label 1. I'll just highlight this and go to label 2. But if you look at these things, I've got here label year, label month, label day, label hour, and so on down the line. I'm not going to take this guy. I want to grab all those pieces that are in that label there and actually apply them to this. So let's go ahead and maybe move this over a little bit. And let's go ahead and double click on this guy right here. And we're going to extend this particular piece of code to include all those pieces. And you do that by accessing all of these guys right here. So I'm going to say that LBL year.text is equal to stk datetime year. LBL month.text equals stk date month. Datetime.month.string. LBL day is stk datetime day. LBL hour is stk datetime hour. LBL minute is stk datetime minute.string. And LBL millisecond is stk millisecond. And that's all we need to do that. So that allows us to access all of the individual integers inside the datetime structure and apply them to a label. Take a look. Run it. This button will now put our datetime up here and also separate all those pieces out. Where's the second? It's not showing up here. Let's find out why. I didn't put in the second. Minute second. LBL second. There we go. And that's in there now, and we'll just bypass this guy and get him out of here. And now we should be good. Much better. We're seeing all those pieces. Notice the 4 zeros here because we did not put those in. In fact, if you look at our code, they all represent these things right here. So they're all coming out just nicely. You're accessing all those integers that are inside the datetime structure that we've got sitting out there. What I'd like to do, first I'm going to grab an exit button here and put him in place too, because we'd like to have that in there as well. We'll go into our code here and close form. This dot close. That takes care of that guy. And then what I want to do is I want to go here and I want to actually grab a DateTimePicker. So I'm going to grab a DateTimePicker right here. And I'm going to change the font on it. I'm going to make it bold. And I'll make it 10 like the other things we got out here so we can see it nice and easily. No reason I have to do that other than to make it a little larger too, so it kind of extends out a little bit. So there it is, our DateTime picker sitting here. I need to give it a name, and we'll call this DTP1. DTP1. And that's all set. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and access the code on this thing, or the event on this. So I'm going to double click on the DateTime picker, and we'll get the value changed event here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that STK DateTime is equal DateTime DP1 value. So it's going to grab the value in the change event up in the code there and apply it to the STK DateTime. So this guy up here is going to get its value changed. That means this do it button is going to be able to looking at different elements in there, so we can actually see all that happen. So let's go ahead and give that a try. We'll do a file save on this, and we'll do a start. And right away we'll do it, and we get our 2025-17000. Now we're going to actually go ahead and change the time on this thing. And by doing that, we'll go out to February. Let's go out to my birthday, 21st of February, and click on the do it. Now we've got this thing set, so we've got a changed event. So change the structure in there. We can now hit do it, and notice everything changes. We're getting at 2025-2/21. Also, we're getting the current time because it's actually changing it. When I set this, it's set it to the actual time I did it, which happened to be 11 o'clock in the morning, 3 minutes after 11, 32 seconds after 11, no milliseconds, right in there. So it popped into that, and we end up with this. So it made that change. So it's very easy then to get at the structure of any DateTime element out there in pieces and do what you want with it. Let's close this guy up. The other structure I want to show you as we get into this introduction is a TimeSpan structure. In the .NET framework, the TimeSpan structure stores information about time interval, about a time interval. It allows you to create objects that store data about an amount of time, such as 9 days or 12 hours, using the following properties: the days, hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. All those are integers. And there's a range, hours minus 23 to 24. Notice we can have positive integers for days. We can go backwards or forwards, in other words, in time for our time span. Minutes also negative and positive. Seconds negative and positive. And milliseconds negative and positive. 9999 to minus 999 to not through 9999. To create an instance of a TimeSpan structure named TSpan, TimeSpan TSpan equals new TimeSpan, just like we do with our random number generator, also just like we do with DateTime. We're setting an instance of the TimeSpan property or element and calling it TSpan. To set individual TimeSpan properties, we use the TimeSpan TSpan equal new TimeSpan day, hour, minute, second, millisecond. The following creates an instance to the TimeSpan structure named TSpan. We're setting the date default to 15 days, 6 hours, 30 minutes, 10 seconds, 500 milliseconds. So that TimeSpan TSpan equals new TimeSpan 15, 6, 30, 10, 500. Very straightforward. Just pop on those integers right in there. Now, the TSpan object is set to 15 days, 6 hours, 30 minutes, 10 seconds, 500 milliseconds. No problem there. We've got a TimeSpan property. What do we do with it? You can add or subtract the TimeSpan object to or from a DateTime object to get another DateTime object. In other words, if we're using the current date time right now, where we stand, and we add 6 hours, 23 seconds to it, we'll get 6 hours, 23 seconds from now in our DateTime thing. We can go out a year if we want, 2 years, 3 years, whatever you want to do. You can actually start stepping forward in time or backwards in time to create these dates according to the way you want to do it in your program. Example, create and add a TimeSpan object that represents 10 days to a DateTime object. You can create a DateTime object for August 15th, 2025, which is DateTime DT equals new DateTime 25/8/15. So we got August 15th, 2025 sitting out there. We're then going to create a TimeSpan object for 10 days. So we set a TimeSpan TSpan equals new TimeSpan 10/000. We're not touching the hours, minutes, all that. We're just looking at days. We then can add that TimeSpan object to the DateTime object to create a future date. So DateTime future date equals DateTime, or the DateTime object, plus the TSpan. That gives the future dates set to August 25th, 2025, 10 days later. Time is unchanged. We're not changing any of that. But we could have changed the time as well. So that's how that thing works. Like we did before, I'm going to go into the code in this particular guy here and bring him up the code area. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up a TimeSpan property. So in my Form 1 global area, I'm going to set up something called the TimeSpan. Notice the capitals and S and the T. STK for structure. TimeSpan. So I'm creating an object called structure TimeSpan. And I'll make it equal to a new TimeSpan. And I'm going to give it some parameters. I'm going to give it 15 days, 6 hours, 30 minutes, 10 seconds, and 500 milliseconds, as we look at the slides before, and put an end to this guy. We've got it in place. That creates our TimeSpan object. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my form here, and I'm going to create a Do It button. And we'll put the Do It button somewhere around here. And we're going to call it Do It, which we did. And it's going to be named Do It. I've got the fonts changed so we can actually see this. I'm also going to grab, like I did in the DateTime object, some parameters, some labels here. So I can actually put them on this board and make them unchanged, apply them up here. And what we have is a series of labels here, which are label 1, label 2, label 5 rather, just showing a day, hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds. But over here I've got labels that are going to show label days, label hours, label minutes, label seconds, and label milliseconds. And then what I'm going to do with the Do It button is I'm going to go ahead and write some code to actually extract the integers that are embedded in the TimeSpan structure that I created here and lay them in those labels. And I'm going to simply do that by copying the code I've got in another program to save us some time and pop them in like this. So LBL days.text, that label, is going to be equal to the XTK's TimeSpan days structure. I'm going to go ahead and save this thing, run it, and up pops our program, and we can say Do It, and bang. It takes that 15, 6, 30, 10, and 500 and place it in labels so I can see that. I can actually get at each one of those integers inside the structure and work with it. Now we're going to start doing some things with this thing. Let's go ahead and create an exit button right away. Pop that down here. And we'll just call this button exit. And we'll call this, we'll call it the exit button. Give us a nice way to get out of the program if we had to. Write the code for it real quickly. And we're all set there. Now we go back to this guy at this point in time. What I'd like to do is I want to create something called Apply Span. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, first of all, I'm going to have to go and grab myself a DateTimePicker button. So I'm going to grab that one here and pop it in place here. We've got ourselves a DateTimePicker. We're going to name this thing DTP1. And we set our fonts in here. And we get that thing all set. So it's got the current date in it as such. I'm then going to create an Apply Span to this guy. So what I'm going to want to do is I want to grab this date. I want to apply our time span to it to create something. So I'm going to need to actually say something a little different here. So I'm going to go ahead and create 2 labels, actually 4 labels, and place them here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the current date time. It's going to show whatever is showing up there initially. And then the projected date time after the span is applied. And here we'll display those particular pieces as we go through this thing. So what's my apply span going to do? Well, it's going to go ahead and it's going to take the current date time and stick it out in the label out here. And then it's going to apply the span to the pick date time and then display it. So I'm going to need another variable. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to create another global object. I'm going to call this DateTime. And it's going to become the STK picker or pick date time equals new date time. And what that's going to happen is whatever I pick from the DateTime picker is going to get stored in here. The value is going to get stored, and then I can apply something to it. That's going to allow me then to use my Apply Span button and create some code for it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the STK picked date time is equal to the DTP1 value. In other words, it's going to grab whatever is in that DateTime picker and store it in this structure. Then I'm going to say LBL current datetime dot text is equal to STK pick datetime to string. So it's going to take that structure and it's going to display it so we can see what it actually is. We're then going to STK pick datetime is going to be equal to STR pick datetime, STK pick datetime, plus STK TimeSpan. We're going to apply the span to that date that we picked. That's going to create a change to the pick date time. So we're going to end up looking at the projected date time and display that in the string. So let's see if that works. We bring it up here. We've got January 9th up here. We're going to go ahead and just let's bring up my birthday again. And let's go out to the February 21st here, pop it in there. And we'll do the do it thing right away. So we can see our datetime span is sitting right here. So we can see our 15. We're going to add 15 days, 6 hours to this. So if we apply that span to it, bang, it takes that February 21st, 2025 date and displays it for us. Applies the span. So our projected time is now March 8th, 2025 at 5:48:37 p.m. So 15 days, 6 hours, 30 minutes, 10 seconds, and 500 milliseconds later than a few minutes ago, it'll be this date and time. So that's how you can apply the time span to it to create this new thing. So you basically can apply these time span properties to increase what you've got here and step forward if you would like. Now let's see if our exit button works. It does. That's good. Good to see. One more thing we'd like to try. We'd like to go ahead and create something that's going to increase the year. I'd like to add 1 to the year on this particular thing. So we're going to go ahead and write some code for this. This is going to be our add 1 year button. Call it button add year. Add 1 year. Add 1 year. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have to do something a little different to do this. Normally you would think you just would be able to add 1 to it. But if you try to add 1 to it, I'll show you this. We can't just add 1 year to the projected date time date. We need a working variable in here. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go up to my DateTime picker here and I'm going to add another one. I'm going to add a new date time that I can use as a working date time. So I'm going to say date time STK working date time is equal to new date time. So that creates a working time for me. Now I can go down here to this add 1 year button and start applying some things to it. What I'm going to say first of all is I'm going to say int year is equal to 1. So I'm going to create a counter basically that's going to go forward for me. So int year will be a 1. And then I'm going to say the STK working date time is equal to STK picked date time dot add years. And we'll use the int year value in there. Then I'm going to say LBL projected date time dot text is equal to STK working date time to string. And that should give us our increase, almost. We'll save it, we'll run it. Go ahead and set that date to my birthday again. Apply the do it, get our time span. We'll apply the span, 221, 1140, 1121, and our span is up here. I want to add 1 year to this thing. So I'm going to click this thing. Bang. It does 2026 perfectly. Hit it again. It doesn't. It doesn't increase it anymore. It only works 1 time. Well, there's a reason for that. If we go back in here and look at this, we've actually made a change to this particular date and time. So that instance is done when we actually did this. What we need to do is add one more thing to this. And that is we need to say that the STK pick date time is equal to STK working date time. By changing each time, we'll be able to increase this thing constantly. So let's take a look. File save all. Run it. Put in the birthday. Do it. That's our span. Apply our span. We've done that. Add our year. 2025, 2026. 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030. We can now add a year each time we click on this particular button. That's pretty much how this stuff works. Here, try our exit button. Worked great. So you saw our date time and time span math, how we actually created that date and we added our time to it and made it work. We actually created it. There's a whole bunch of methods you can use for the date time math methods, and that's the add. We saw the add button being used, or the add method being used. We actually added the time span to our object initially. We also did the years, where we could take the object and add years to it and increase that. We could also add months, days, hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, just the same way we'd add the years, and you'd be able to make modifications to that date time. So this basically is the way you work with these two particular structures, the date time structure and the time span structure, which are part of the structured, which are part of data structures in C#. We're going to look much more deeply now at structures themselves in the next video. Well, that sets the stage. In the next video, we'll focus directly on structures themselves. You'll learn how we can group several variables together in a single item known as a structure. Thanks for watching. Visit the website when you get a chance, and please subscribe to the channel. There's more stuff coming every week. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.